Well, now we've planted out our alliums, time to tidy up these lavenders. Kate's just going to go over these. We've got a pair of pointy, very sharp snips, almost like scissors, and you could do this with scissors because there's no woodiness or strength in these old flower stems off the lavender. We want to try and retain all the lavender leaf as best we can, and we're just cutting back to where the flower stems have grown away from the plants and taking off any spent material. And what we'll leave on here is any flower that's still got colour in it. We won't get a second flush out of the lavender, too late in the season for that. There may still be some late flower coming on though. It's worthwhile just tidying these all up, and the other thing we're going to do is any material where the wood has died back, like that old stem there where there's no growth coming away from it, we'll take out completely, so you're removing any diseased or damaged dieback and just leaving a healthy growing young stems to grow away and fill in the gaps. We showed you a little earlier the lavender seeds in the flower heads on these plants that are sitting just above this gravel area, and just look what happens if you just aren't too vigorous with your hoeing or weeding of the gravel. These little plants have been growing away here this summer, and the one in the centre is even about to flower, putting up a little flower spike for the first time. If these are in the right position, thanks Poppy, then they can be just left to grow away naturally and they'll form new fresh lavender plants for you. But it's a great time of year to, if you want to transplant them, either dig them up and plant them into pots to put in their final position later, or to transplant them directly into their final flowering positions. And this gives you fresh lavender stock. If any of your old plants have died out, lost their vigour, or been lost, it gives you a fresh young plant to replant into that area. So we're just going to continue picking over these lavender plants until we've tidied away the majority of the old seed heads. It should tidy this border considerably. I'm just going to quickly show you where we're cutting back to on these lavender flower heads, because this is the flower stem, and quite often you'll get this double leaf growth here, but the point that we're cutting back to is just above this new fresh bushy growth. So we've cut back to there, and look at all those new little side shoots. That's going to form a lovely thick dense new little stem, and the same with the one above it. That one's still flowering, but if I go down to here, we're cutting back to those new bushy fresh young growths, which will grow away nicely and produce all the flower next season. Picking over this one half of the dual border lavender edging that we've got here, and it's looking a lot tidier now. We've taken all the deadheads and seed pods off and just left these very occasional mauve flower spikes that the bees are still busily enjoying. Now, if that was the only pruning you were going to do to your lavenders, you'd end up after a while with some very scraggy, leggy lavender plants, and these are starting to show some of those signs with long woody growth and the green or silvery leaf just at the end of those. Now what we will do to these plants later in the season is give them a much harder cut back, and what you're looking to do is not to do too radical a prune, but where you've got some fresh growth coming from the centre of a plant like that, then if you're looking to maintain these as a tight centred plant, we'll cut back almost all of that peripheral growth, just leaving that central portion to come away and grow on for next season. So that's the sort of shaping pruning that you'll do, and that's done much later in the year once all the flower is finished, and that will probably be done in England at around the end of October, beginning of November. Well, we've finished picking over and removing all the dead flower heads from these lavender bushes now, and it's looking a lot tidier. Bees are still enjoying some of the young flowers. There's obviously still nectar in this plant attracting them, so it's worthwhile leaving these flowers on for the next couple of weeks. But this is just the deadheading that we're doing here. It's not a hard prune of the actual lavender plants. So in a couple of weeks' time, when all the flower is finished on these, we're going to give them a much harder prune back towards these central young growths that are coming away. If you don't do that, you tend to end up with some very leggy lavender bushes that look a little unkempt. And by pruning them hard back at the right time of year, you can encourage that young growth to form a nice, vigorous, well-centered plant, which will give you fantastic flower and structure the following season. And while we're busy working away in the garden, these two have taken up the position and will quite happily enjoy the last of this autumn sunlight here. Vimarana's absolutely disgusted we haven't got a third one of these loungers. Yeah, not happy girl, are you? You should have to make do with the patio floor instead.